With 2 weeks to go until the Tarawera Ultra Trail, the topic of today's video is how not to DNF your 100-mile race, a topic on which I feel I have a certain expertise to speak, given that I DNF'd last year, and also having completed one in 23.5 hours. Before we get into talking about that, a little word on taper. At this point, with 13 nights to go until we kick off at Tarawera, you should be starting to wind down your volume a little bit and also reduce the number and quantity of any intervals you're doing in speed work, and you absolutely should be doing some speed work as part of your training, in my personal opinion. The whole idea of this is just to let your body recover from the rigors of training, so when you kick off on race day, you're just in the best shape you can possibly be. Now, talking about how not to DNF your race, I have some good news and I have some bad news. The good news is that there are lots and lots of things you can do in order not to DNF your race, or to reduce the likelihood of it, because sometimes these things happen despite your best efforts. Injuries happen, accidents happen, it's just the nature of it. But there are things you can do to reduce the probability. The bad news is that by far the greatest thing you can do to reduce the probability of DNFing is training. And if you haven't already done a decent amount of training with some quality, by this point, with 2 weeks to go, you're probably in trouble. So I'm very, very much hoping you have done a decent amount of training. But if you haven't, you may wish to consider rethinking and possibly jumping down to one of our shorter distances, or if you have a good reason to defer, maybe you might be able to get a deferral. So, what can we do to reduce our chances of DNFing? I think in the lead up to the race, the first thing I would say is be organised. Have yourself a plan for accommodation, for travel. Who's going to be pacing you? How are you going to work with your pacer? What drop bags are you going to have? What are you going to have in those drop bags at which aid stations? And have a general idea of the sort of range of times that you're going to run in the race. Now we're going to talk about pacing in a little bit, but it's a good idea to have some kind of sensible idea. Goals. Now, one of the things I did was I had a very firm goal for Tarawera 2023 that I wanted to run in the general sort of 21 to 22 hour range, and I really felt that I had the fitness. But I didn't really have much in the way of goals that I'd really considered beyond that. So it's a good idea to have an A goal, especially if you have a kind of time-based A goal, and for a lot of people that will be trying to go under 24 hours, which is a pretty stout goal, it must be said. So if you don't meet your A goal, or it's looking like you're not, consider having a B goal, because that gives you something to fall back to rather than just having this mental collapse where you get there, you don't make your time, and you just don't see the point anymore, so you give up. So have an A goal, have a B goal, have a C goal, and your D goal might be just finish the damn race. But there we go. Don't make rash decisions on race day. I think very much under that heading, don't come into an aid station, you feel tired, you've got blisters, and just throw your toys out the pram and stop. Sit down, have a cup of tea, take a 20-minute power nap. You've got 36 hours to finish the race. That's bags and bags of time, so just take it easy, sort yourself out, have a bite to eat. If you are feeling down or mentally a bit low, there's an extremely good likelihood that you're starting to bonk because your blood sugar's a bit low, you've not been quite keeping up with your nutrition, and so having something to eat will allow your brain to think a little bit more clearly. Know your why. Go see video 1, we talked about that previously. Write it down, remind yourself of it, draw yourself a little smiley face on your hand. Looking at that, there is actually, believe it or not, some evidence to suggest that that can help improve performance and keep you going when things aren't looking great. Golden rule, try nothing new on race day. If you haven't trained wearing it, rubbing it on intimate portions of your anatomy, eating it, whatever it might be, don't try it on race day. You've got 2 weeks now. 2 weeks is probably enough to find out if that tube of lube you got given for Christmas is going to work and stop you chafing, or whether it's going to irritate your skin and make it worse. Nutrition we've talked about previously, but again, if you've got some new gels you want to try them on a long run now. Half marathon to 30k is long enough. You might get 1 or 2 of those in before the race. If you can do that, try it now. Don't do anything new on race day. The risk is just too great that it's going to make you puke, make you chafe worse, give you blisters. The final thing I'd say is, when you start out on that race, just go out at a sensible pace. You might be saying, I want to finish in under 24 hours, and you might start off at 5 minutes a K. 5 minutes a K is something in the region of a 14-hour race or something like that. I'll do the math and stick it in the link below. That's really, really fast. You don't need to. You could start out at a 10-minute pace. 10 minutes a mile, 100 miles, 1,000 minutes, 15, 16 and some hours and change. That would win you the race, or certainly get you on the podium. So just chill. You've got plenty of time. Go out at a nice, sensible pace. Ease into it. You can always speed up in the last 50K if you're feeling really, really good. If you aren't feeling so good because you've booted it out the gate, and that is exactly what I did in 2023, it's really, really hard to slow down. You don't have a choice. You're going to slow down, but not only are you going to slow down a little, you're going to slow down an awful lot. So for every minute that you pull yourself in and you gain in the first 50K, you will lose 2 or 3 times as much, possibly more in the last 50K, above the kind of pace that you actually should be running. So take your time, go out at a nice sensible pace. You will be absolutely fine. You can always speed up a little bit. There's plenty of time out there. Enjoy the experience. It's a fantastic thing to happen. Now at this point, I should probably say this is exactly what happened to me. I went out at Okataina at a very nice sensible pace, and then went up over Okataina, maybe a little bit quick, but not too bad. And then we got to the top and I felt hemmed in, and the people in front were going too slow and the people behind catching up were going too fast. I couldn't get at the right pace and I just lost patience, and I kicked on at about 15 or 16K into the race and started booting it downhill towards Miller Road. And then similarly, I went through from Miller Road to Blue Lake really, really quick. And I did the first marathon, so from Okataina to the village green, in 4 hours and 50 minutes. That's really quick. I did, in my 2019 under 24-hour finish, I did the same thing in, I think it was 6.5 hours. So I went from 6.5 hours to 4 hours 50 minutes. So more than an hour and a half faster. And that was just stupid. And that was why I had such quad problems and such really bad cramp in the last section, and that was why I DNF'd. Had I gone out at a much sensible pace, I could have walked the whole of Okataina, which I did in 2019, and I still finished in under 23 hours, and that would have been a much, much more sensible approach to it. There's plenty of time to catch people up. There's plenty of time to overtake people. So, you know, unless you're really looking at a podium and you've got the form to back it up, don't worry about place. Don't worry about feeling cramped. The race will spread out. You've got plenty of time. So just chill and let it happen. Now at this point, the more observant among you may have noticed I've not mentioned mental toughness. I've not asked who's going to carry the boats. I've not told you to stay hard. That's not because mental toughness isn't important. It really, really is. You don't finish a 100-mile race without having a certain amount of mental toughness. But that's the last ditch thing. That's the last thing you rely on to get you out of the hole and get you to the finish when you're really not sure you can make it. There are a ton of other really, really practical things you can do before you get to that point. They're going to mean that that mental toughness you need, because it is a finite resource, is going to be there when you really, really need it, just to get going again and get back out on the trail. And you don't start to eat away at that mental resolve early on in the day. So it's important, but it's not the thing that you're going to rely on right from the start. Rely on your fitness. Make sure you don't do anything stupid on race day, nothing new. Make sure you've got a plan so there's no things to throw you off mentally. Make sure you know your why. Have some goals to fall back on, or even step up to, depending on how your race is going on the day. Because so much of it you can't plan for. You've just got to run the race that's in front of you, based on how you feel at the time and the conditions. There is nothing more to it than that. So mental toughness, fantastic, bring it on. But it ain't the first tool in your toolbox that's going to get you to the finish. It's the last one. So I've really enjoyed making this series. My final video next week is going to kind of be a bit of a Q&A, so I'll be posting on a number of social media sites asking for questions. I'll also stick an email up that people can email me at. I hope your taper is going really, really well on top of a good training load that's going to get you to the finish. Have a fantastic weekend and enjoy your Waitangi Day off on Tuesday. Take care, guys and gals.